Hi, everyone. My name is Christy Kennedy. I am a Smith alum, class of 2010, and I'm the Director of Alumni Professional Networks and Career Programs here at Smith. Gail Fritzinger, class of 81, is a career transition professional with over 20 years of experience in outplacement counseling, career development, and executive search. Her specific expertise is in resume development, interview training and practice, assessment of job skills and interests, and career research and marketing. She is an experienced facilitator of career transition workshops like these and one-on-one counseling sessions for clients at all levels and in all industries. I can attest to this. Gail utilizes a compassionate, genuine, and straightforward coaching approach that helps clients identify their strengths, abilities, and value add, deepen their self-awareness, and feel challenged to take meaningful action toward achieving their full potential and goals.
Thanks so much, Christy. What I wanted to do first before we get started was just tell you a very quick story about me and about why this topic in particular is so important to me and so relevant. So I graduated from Smith and for 16 years worked in a variety of different fields. I started out in banking, then I moved into college recruiting, then I went into executive search consulting. Then I started working for a startup biotech company as kind of a chief administrative officer. And then I pivoted to what I do now, which was outplacement and career transition. It was smooth. I was using my transferable skills. I was doing everything that I preach. And then we moved to Denver and my career came to a screeching halt. My husband took a job with a startup, was working 6 days a week, 15 hours a day. I had 3 small children under the age of 4, no family in Denver, and there was really no option other than for me to take a career break. So that's what I did for 7 years. I took a career break, watching my kids and kind of getting used to the community. I went back to work in outplacement for 1 year, and then took another career break for 10 years. And did a variety of things, which I'll tell you about. And then at the age of 58, I was hired as a senior career transition coach after 10 years of not working. So all of what we're going to talk about today is very close to my heart. And I feel for people who are going through the same situation. It's challenging and difficult at times, but there are definitely tips and tricks for how to navigate it, which we'll talk about. So one of the things is during those career breaks, some of these things I fell into and some of them I initiated, but I did things that kept me sort of engaged and relevant. So it was a combination of some volunteer work. I worked for a nonprofit that helps chronically unemployed women in Denver. It helps them secure jobs. So I was still doing resume writing. I was doing networking help. I was doing a mentor program. It was just a very, very different demographic than I had formerly worked with. That led to leadership positions within that organization and then a board position, actually. And I'm still involved with them. And then I fell into kind of the school thing, which maybe some of you can relate to. You know, my kids were going through one school and I got very involved in parent association and leading that. And I did some fundraising events and became a trustee of the school and did a variety of things. So I kept up my leadership stuff. I did some fundraising. I did a variety of things, did some other kind of workshops for people. That segued into some affordable housing stuff that I do now with more leadership roles. And again, I still lead some career workshops for this affordable housing organization for some of their employees, some career workshops. So as you can see, the trend here is that I kept doing things that were in my line of work. They just weren't for a salary. So when I went back to try to find another career opportunity, the firm that hired me said, you know, you are still relevant. You are still doing the same things. We need you. So it was very, it was great, certainly for my ego to know that I could still get a job. And so that's what I've been doing ever since and doing these workshops for Smith. So what I'm saying here, I guess, is really the goal for everyone is really to stay engaged as much as possible, even if you are working and not working, or you're doing something that is part-time, or you're with your family, or you've taken a break for health reasons, whatever it might be. Keeping your skills and relationships up to date is really probably the most important thing.
Gail's story is not unique to Gail. What we want to demonstrate to you all, first and foremost, is that you are not alone in navigating these kinds of transitions. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was do a quick poll just to give ourselves and everyone on the call a sense of why we're all here and kind of what challenges as a collective we may be facing. So lots of folks who are coming back after taking time away for family or looking to pivot. We are going to get to some specific examples later on in the session after Gail has given us more of this kind of content that she's going to share about tips and tricks. We'll walk through some real anecdotes and examples so we can have kind of Gail's coaching on how to navigate those specific kinds of situations.
Just a couple of quick kind of facts about the market right now. As we all know, given the events of the last 3 years with the pandemic, career breaks are extremely common. So especially for women, something like approximately 5.4 million women have left the workforce since the beginning of COVID. And women's participation in the workforce is at its lowest point since 1988. So we've taken a real step back. There even somebody coined the term a she session, like a recession. So, and according to LinkedIn, 64% of women have experienced a career break. The top 2 reasons really being parental leave or medical leave. So that answers a lot of you that wrote that in the poll is, 50% said that they had taken a break for family reasons. We always talked about this. It used to be that a break or a gap on your resume was absolutely, taboo. It was a career killer. But now career breaks are really very common. As I just said, there are opportunities to strengthen your competencies or renew your energy if that's what you need, if you've experienced some burnout. And it's also a time to try on some new career options. And employers are sort of waking up to the fact that they really need talented workers, obviously, especially women. Some companies are actually offering what they call returnships, kind of like an internship, a returnship. IBM, for instance, is doing this. And there's some websites where you can go on and look at returnships if that's something that you're interested in. So that's just another way to attract workers who want more flexible work environments. And it's a way to attract them and also retain them. So I want to talk to you. Everybody got ahead of time a list of the 7 tips that I kind of came up with. And I want to just kind of run through those. So the first one is probably the most important, which is kind of shaping the narrative about why you took a career break. There is really no reason to apologize for this. You really just need to state it confidently and clearly and just say, I took a break for fill in the blank, whatever reason it is. It's one of those things where I know it feels uncomfortable, it feels like a negative, but it's really one of those things you state it and then you move on and you talk about why you are someone who should be hired for another position. Reasons are typically caring for kids, caring for sick relatives, burnout, desire to gain some new skills, whatever it might be, pivot to something new. But it's all about then developing really your story. Those 2 handouts, one is called Personal Brand and one is Why Me, and those are worksheets. Those are things that I came up with that you can take a look at and help you kind of develop this story and kind of shape your own narrative. So, and what really are those kinds of things are things where you identify skills that you have, abilities that you have, you think about key accomplishments. Doesn't matter whether they're professionally related. It could be things that you've done the last few years that are more personal. It could be something that you did on a volunteer basis. It could be from anything that you're doing. We all have value. We all have done things. We all have skills. And now's just the time to really think about those, do your own kind of self-assessment and then create kind of this story, this brand for yourself. What we're all trying to find really is, what I would call kind of your sweet spot, right? It's sort of the intersection of what do you enjoy and what you're good at. And that's also kind of ties into kind of your value add. I'm a big person that believes in everybody has some value add that they can give to an organization. And really, that's what an employer is looking for. They're looking for people who can add value to their organization, can do something differently, can bring different experiences. So that's what you want to really identify and think about. So use those worksheets as kind of a starting point, if that works for you, and see if you can kind of craft your narrative and your story. Along with that, if you're getting started and you're like, what do I want to do? I have no idea what I want to do. Is after you've kind of looked at what your skills are, think about, what have you liked to do? If you look back at past jobs, what were the things you liked best? What were the things you didn't like? That's always helpful. And then starting to think about 3 to 4 potential career paths. What are things that you might be interested in exploring that would use your skills and use your abilities and your competencies? And so start to think about those. And then along with that, start to research companies that are places that have those kinds of positions and where you could possibly, talk to people, where you could find opportunities. So it's kind of a tandem thing here where you're thinking about career paths and then you're thinking about companies where you could actually work. Researching companies is easy. Obviously, these days you can look on company websites. Google is great for everything. You can go onto blogs. You can also talk to people. And I'll talk a little bit later about networking. But this is the time, if you are seriously considering going back to work, to really think about reactivating your network and using that to help you find opportunities. So all of this sort of preliminary work, the self-assessment, the thinking about career paths, the researching target companies, all of that is really helpful in terms of preparation for when you do start doing some informational interviewing or networking. And certainly when you start interviewing with companies, that kind of thing to get ready is the best way to kind of find what your next fit is. So the next thing is also incredibly important if you are transitioning back from a break is what do you need? What are your priorities? Is it flexibility? You've still got kids at home, and so you need something that's part-time maybe, or you need something that is remote work or has flexible hours. Do you need the money? Is money the most important factor for you? Is that something that you're definitely focused on? Is it the remote work? Do you want to be back in an office? Is there some kind of hybrid situation that works for you? And really, what are your top sort of professional values, work values? Is it that you want challenge? You're looking for kind of work relationships. Is it salary? Is it learning opportunities? Responsibility, a different kind of responsibility? Would you like to not, be your own boss? Would you like to run your own company? Promotional potential, all of those different things are things to think about. But you really, before you decide to go back, you have to think about, what are the priorities and what works for you in terms of a career path. So those are things to think about. Again, think about past jobs. Again, what did you like and dislike? Did you like having flexibility? Do you need flexibility? Are you happier with a position that's broader in scope or maybe more narrow and more focused? You have to kind of create your own vision for that. So part of that goes along with kind of the nuts and bolts of job search if you're going to enter into a job search, which is kind of rethinking your personal brand again. And a lot of that is kind of updating a resume you may have. And that probably is scary for a lot of people. If you've had a big career break, it's like, oh my gosh, I don't even have a resume anymore. How do I get started on that? But updating a resume, looking at resumes, talking to people about how to put one together. I'll mention later about maybe hiring a coach. We can talk about that. but also updating LinkedIn, going on LinkedIn, starting a LinkedIn profile if you don't have one. All of those things are things you have to have now in terms for looking for a job. So LinkedIn actually even has a new feature that they call career breaks, where you can go on and give some context and some details about why you took a career break, and you can add that to your LinkedIn profile. So they've got the message that people have taken breaks from work, especially during this time of the pandemic. So your resume, though, should really focus on, current and relevant skills. Again, it doesn't matter where you got those from, if you've gotten them from what you've been doing most recently, and also focus on accomplishments. Again, not all accomplishments come from professional work. They come from other things that we do, that we've filled our time with while we've taken this career break. So think about that and how to put that together. There's lots of help out there for that. Remember that when you are applying for things, you always have to customize your resume. So you'll be doing that as well. So think about that. I've been talking a lot about skills. I talk a lot generally about transferable skills because we all have them. And that's what you're going to be selling to people, the transferable skills that you have from whatever you've been doing during your break to whatever you want to do next. The other thing that goes along with that is this whole idea of kind of upskilling. Or up leveling, they call it as well. And this has been a time, this is a good time actually to think about learning new skills or updating skills that you have. If you feel like your technical skills are weak, this is a great time to use something like LinkedIn Learning. They've got a million courses that you can take if you're trying to learn something new. Maybe you want to get a certification. That's something that's fairly easy to do. You can do online. Especially if you're in a position where things are changing very rapidly, like digital marketing, or you're doing, something in kind of a software or IT, anything with IT. Fields that change rapidly require additional certifications and training. So if that is something, if that's a direction that you're thinking about going in, you might really want to kind of move forward and think about certifications. And how to do that. So you just want to make sure that you are competitive, again, that you're relevant, and that people do not even question whether or not you can do the job for those reasons, for skill reasons. So good time to look into all of that. One way to do it actually is, if you're thinking about a certain field, look into certain job positions, read them, the job description, and see what are employers asking for. Are they asking for some very specific technical skill, or some sort of program, or some data analytics, whatever it might be that you would have to have in order to take those jobs. So, and that's a great guide for what you need to do from there and what kinds of certifications you might need. There are some resources that I've come across over the last few months. There's a website called APRES, APRES. It's got career resources for women returning to work. And then there's another one called womenbacktowork.org, and they have returnships, like I mentioned. So that's another thing to take a look at. But there are lots and lots of websites. I mean, there's flexjobs.com if you're looking for a flexible job. I mean, there are just many, many of these that you can look at, and that'll help you kind of get back into the market. I mentioned networking. I'm sort of a networking fanatic, to be honest. I mean, that is effective networking is kind of my mantra, and there is no other way to probably more effective way to get back into the workforce than to reactivate your network, whatever that looks like. If you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm really disconnected from my former coworkers, what is my network? Who is in my network? Start with the people that you know best. Start with family and friends and people you've maybe been in organizations with. Maybe it's a volunteer organization. Whoever I mean, everybody is sort of fair game in my world of networking, because everybody does something. Everybody is working or has worked and has connections. Everybody has contacts, and everybody really has advice for you, advice and guidance. So This is the time to really find those people that can be helpful to you. There is no better way to find an opportunity really than to network. And because it's less competitive, you're not out there with hundreds of people who are pushing the button on Indeed.com or other job aggregators. And you're talking to people who know you, who you can really share your ideas, who can be helpful crafting these career paths that you might be thinking about. And just validating that you are able to get back into the workforce. So I think we're all kind of looking for that. We're all looking for people who can say, we still have value, we do have skills, we do have abilities and competencies, and we can make it work and we can do something different. So find out who those people are. I did a workshop on networking. If you want to review that, that's helpful, with lots of networking tips. And hopefully what will happen is the networking will then sort of transition into some real interviewing opportunities where you're looking at actual positions that you might want to accept. So preparing for interviews is something that everybody is afraid of. Interviewing is always pretty anxiety producing, but again, you've done some informational interviewing. It's not that different. If you've done all the different things I've talked about, like doing the skills assessment, knowing who you are, knowing what your accomplishments are, knowing how to talk about yourself, having a good story for kind of why me, why should you consider me, then interviewing will be easy. Always a good idea to review, kind of the standard interview questions just so you have an idea of what's going on. Thinking about those accomplishment stories, highlighting sort of what your strengths are, highlighting your value adds, why somebody should hire you. All of those things are important. Practice interviewing techniques with someone is helpful, and why you're a good fit for an organization. You've got to sell yourself. You've got to make that case. One way to do this, and this is a shameless plug, is to hire a coach. Christy has been fantastic in putting together a group of Smith coaches, and we're all willing to give our time at a reduced rate. We give a Smith rate, which is nice. But a career coach can really help you if you're just feeling incredibly stuck. We're helpful with skill assessment. We're helpful with updating a resume and LinkedIn. We're helpful with the networking, practicing interviews, really just building confidence. And I can't stress that enough. I mean, this is one of these situations where maybe you're not feeling particularly confident about your chances of going back to work, but that is something that will come with time and with effort. And I think that having that confidence to say, I am still relevant, I am still valuable, I can still contribute, is really where you want to be right now. And a coach can really help with that. I mean, we're good at sort of, boosting confidence and reassuring you that there is a place for you, and just working on all the different parts of this whole effort to make it work. So I recommend, looking into that. The other thing, and the last thing I'll talk about here, is this idea of don't give up. It's really easy to get frustrated, really easy to have setbacks and just feel like I cannot do this. I've been out too long. I just don't know even where to get started and what to do. But find a good support group. And one of them is the Smith Career Network. Again, I'll make a plug for that the college is really stepping up in their efforts to connect alums through workshops like this, through networking. They're really, we have an amazing bond as Smith grads. We all get each other, we all support each other, and there is no reason why you cannot call on anyone who went to Smith to be of help to you. So this Smith Career Network is a great start. The Smith Coach is a great start, but also just whoever's in your Smith, network. That's a very easy place to start. That's a very low low bar in terms of, anxiety and approaching people and getting some really good feedback. So I've been working with some Smith grads, and it's amazing who they find in companies that are doing things that they're interested in. So I highly recommend that as a place to start.
We had a couple of questions in the chat that can feel overwhelming to think about finding volunteer opportunities when you're in the midst of a crisis or really trying to move and make your next move. So, Gail, if you don't have all the time in the world to think about all these volunteer opportunities, how would you kind of prioritize your time in the most effective way, right? Where would you really direct your energy? How would you find those ways to stay current and keep active while also kind of having time to sleep and eat and all the other things we need to do in a day?
Find things that sort of work with your daily activities. Maybe if let's say your kids are in school and there's some opportunities for parents. I mean, it can be something really straightforward, like you're helping out in the classroom. Maybe you're leading an event or something, or you volunteer to organize an event. So you're using organizational skills, you're using some leadership skills, you're using communication skills. Maybe you have time to write like a newsletter, or maybe it's something in your neighborhood. It's something like you live in a neighborhood that has a homeowners association, let's say, and they need somebody to be treasurer, let's say, of the homeowners association, and you've got financial skills and a financial background, or you're a CPA or something like that, and maybe you do something like that. And if all of those things fail, and let's say you have really no time for anything, do you have time to even just, do a quick upskilling kind of thing, like advanced Excel, or you need you've never learned how to do a PowerPoint presentation. And so you want to learn how to do that, and you can do that online. I mean, the beauty now is we can do almost everything online. And again, I'll make the plug for LinkedIn Learning. They have all those kinds of courses if you have time, let's say, to do something like that.
There was another question in the chat. Where do you put, you were just talking about volunteer opportunities, and where do those go? Do they go in your resume? Do they go in your cover letter? Is that something you kind of just articulate in the interview itself? Where do you showcase those skills, and how do you showcase them in a way that seems professional and really relevant?
Okay. Yeah, they go on your resume. I mean, you might refer to something specific, like a specific accomplishment in your cover letter, but I would put all of the volunteer things on your resume. There are a couple ways you can do it. One way would be you could do what we call a functional resume, where it's really outlined by skill groups, and you could put them under different skill groups. Like if you had a lot of communications experience, or you had leadership or something like that. But in a very traditional resume, which is we've all seen like in the reverse chronological, you would put them, list them and talk about what your position was. If your professional experience is more recent, make a separate section, either call it additional experience or selected activities, or you could say leadership experience, you could call it volunteer or community engagement, put a separate section. But absolutely highlight it on your resume. You want people to see it.
Learning how to design websites, and if LinkedIn Learning is a resource for that, absolutely. They have thousands upon thousands of videos ranging from kind of how to start your own business to how to, I don't know, there's like accounting and Excel and all these other great, very technical things that they have. Would highly recommend checking out LinkedIn Learning for pretty much anything you're interested in. They just have so much great content. How do you use the LinkedIn feature, the highlighting a career break? Gail, I'm curious about that too. How would you really leverage that?
So if you go on, it give you step-by-step instructions how to insert it. There's the section that says about, which is kind of your overall summary of who you are. So it's sort of like that. And so what you can do is you can tell kind of a story about why you did take a career break. You can talk about, took a leave because you were looking to, looking to do research or investigate other career paths, something like that. Or you were doing it to learn some new skills, or you were taking time for personal reasons to be with family. So it just gives people an idea of why you took the career break, as opposed to, if you just looked at LinkedIn normally, you would see just gaps. So this way it fills in those gaps for you.
Gaps on a resume. I'm thinking about situations where folks may have maybe lost a job or been let go. How do you kind of articulate those kinds of gaps on a resume that may be accounting for a career break?
Everybody has gaps on their resume. I mean, you can try, depends on how long they are, but in some cases, let's say it's just a year. One way to kind of hide that a bit is by just not putting the months on your work experience, just putting the years, and so it'll sort of flow. If there's a gap, there's a gap. I mean, I think that if it's multiple years, then have something fill in, whether it's, other activities that you might have done. But I do think that, don't try to create something. I mean, just a gap is fine. Don't worry about it. Just be honest about what it is. We're seeing more and more and more gaps on resumes. It's just kind of what it is.
A friend of mine who's a little older than me advised to remove years for jobs from the past, even if they may be relevant to the work you're looking for, because people are looking to hire younger folks who are going to stay with for a longer period of time.
Yeah, I mean, believe me, I'm in that boat. So I completely understand it. So what I would say on that is, if you do feel like you want to put jobs that you had earlier in your career on there that would date you, create this kind of additional experience section, and then just list the jobs and the job titles and don't put the dates. And certainly take the date off of education, college graduation, that kind of thing. Interestingly, in the state of Colorado, there's a piece of legislation going through right now that it's going to be illegal to ask people when they graduated from college. So, I mean, obviously you can't ask people's ages, but you could ask things like that and you could figure it out. You could do the math, but that will be illegal to do that.
I mean, it's indicative of that being a known problem, right? And people doing something to address it. How far is too far back?
I tell people don't go back any further than 15 to 20 years. I'm more like about 15 years, unless it's something that's relevant to what you're looking at now. But I would say don't go back much further than that, because people just don't really, they're not as interested in that. They want to look at your most relevant and recent experience.
Yeah.
And I know that might be hard if you've taken a break, if you've taken a 10-year break, let's say, like I did. That's why I felt like I had to fill it with things that still were relevant. And again, this really speaks to the networking, is if you can have people speak for you and say, I know it looks like she hasn't worked in a while, but her skills are really up to date. She's got exactly what we need. She can add a lot of value. We need to talk to her. There is the power of networking, is having people be your advocate.
We have a very concrete example and a question. The job that they most enjoyed and did best was 20 years ago. For the past 20 years, I've taken a fallback job that I really hated. How do I overcome that and get back into the industry from 20 years ago?
20 to 30 years ago, I developed a real estate database company, and was probably the first company internationally to deliver real-time real estate information over the internet. Kind of a big deal. And so I sold the company and did what everybody does when they sell a tech business: pack up the family and move to Florida. Well, in Florida, nobody cared at all about real estate information. They just wanted to buy the stuff. And so I've been selling real estate in Florida for 20 years, and I hated every minute of it. Now I'm living in DC, ready to start a new life and a new career, and I want to get back into the database technology. I've been keeping a database of every apartment unit in my apartment building, and the availabilities, price changes, just something minor, just to have something to do really. But
Okay.
no, so that's my story.
Okay. So are you interested in starting another company, or are you thinking maybe you would, is this something that you could join forces with a big real estate company and offer this kind of service to them? I mean, it sounds very relevant to me, given that
it is relevant, and
the state
and
of the
it
real estate
actually there's a job industry classification for it now called prop tech that didn't even exist, of course, when I did it.
Right.
And yeah, but how do I? And there are large companies, of course, that I can talk to, but my problem is, how do I relay that? I'd like a startup company, like to work in a startup company. And,
Right.
I see perhaps maybe being the den mother, of all these young MBAs that think they know everything and don't know how to sit across, on the curb of the street, and look at it and say, does this make any sense?
Right.
Because I can speak the jargon, a little bit of tech, but not currently, not the current. I read those descriptions and I don't know what some of those things mean, but I do know how to read a database. I do know how to consolidate databases, and I do know how to get creative with what to do with them. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, I know what you mean though. So you need people to do sort of what they call kind of the back end of it, and you can do the front end, which is all the sort of relationship building, selling of it, that kind of thing. And then you just need people who are the tech people who can kind of build it out for you.
Exactly.
What I would start doing is, do you still have a fairly good real estate network? I mean, do you have people who are in various phases, that do real estate investment, that kind of thing? Do you know people like that?
Yeah, I'm a member of several elite real estate counseling groups and land economic societies.
I would start talking to some people like that, like real estate investment people, not brokers, but real estate investment, big, even sort of developers, even private equity firms that do a lot of real estate investment, that kind of thing, maybe. And just talk to people and sort of share your idea with them, where you've come from, what your idea is now, what you need, and just see what kind of response you get from that. I sense that you've got the skills. I mean, you may not have all the detailed technical skills, but you've got the concepts and you've got the ideas, and that's the value you're going to add. I know I don't have this, but this is what I can bring. And these are my ideas. What do you think? Where would I go from here? But I would first really work on your story, that you're very clear on what you can do, what you can add, so that they understand. Because when we do the networking, when you talk to people, it's not really their responsibility to think out of the box for you. I mean, they're reacting to what you're telling them. And so that's when they come up with contacts and ideas and all that kind of stuff. But you have to tell them something first. And so that's where you need to have kind of your story. This is what I've done. This is what I accomplished. This is what I think is needed in the market.
You need to look at your experience as a realtor as an excellent information gathering advantage. And you know how to create the information sellers and buyers need. So again, going back to, what do you bring to the table? What have you learned through this less than ideal kind of job you've been doing for a while that you can then also bring over into this other space that you're looking to get back into? I'm just going to get into our case studies and use this as our jumping off point. You left a director level position because you had children or you have family to take care of. And now you're going back and you feel like you need to look for jobs that are at a lower level because you're looking for flexibility. But when you're applying for those lower level jobs, you feel like you're kind of overqualified or they're looking for younger people. How do you kind of balance I have the experience, but I've been out of the game. I need something that's a little lower stakes or easier for me to manage with everything else I have in my life, but people aren't looking at me because I've had this other big career before. How do you balance that?
There are trade-offs, obviously, when you're looking for something more flexible. It might be money, it might be title, it might be responsibility. So that gets back to when I said you have to really think about what your priorities are. What do you need to be happy and challenged? If you need the money, let's say, then you're going to have to figure out how to balance the other things. I mean, if it's a senior level job that pays more, it's probably going to demand more hours. I think the thing is, when you're asking about, do I have to take something lower level? I think it depends on, I don't think I would think of it as much lower level as think about what kinds of responsibilities you want to have. What do you want to do? What are the things in the job that are most important to you? And that might be enough to make you happy as opposed to having the higher title. I mean, if you're doing the things that really challenge you and that you really love, and maybe you thought about what you really liked in the job you had before, if you're still doing those things, you might say, that's enough for me. That's what I can do. That will make me happy right now. I think I'd go in that direction. That would be my way of balancing it, is find the things that, kind of bring you professional joy and not worry so much about, how people are looking at you or whether it's a lower level job. I have faith that, once you're in a job, you can probably change it and do whatever you want with it. And maybe as you have more time, you'll grow with the opportunities. But I would just initially find the things that really, like I was talking about, that sweet spot, that you feel like you're really good at and that you want to do, and that intersection, so that you're happy going back and you're not resenting it.
How do you get people to consider you for those more like lower responsibility, more entry level jobs if you have a resume that speaks to a lot of, right? You're in an overqualified position.
I hate to sort of sound like a broken record, but I'll talk about the networking thing again. What I would do is, let's say there's a position you're really interested in. I would look up that company on LinkedIn and see if you have any connections to people who work there, and talk to some of those people and see if you can kind of network your way into that company, so that you can actually talk to somebody about the opportunity and explain exactly where you are. That the reason you're interested is because you can do it, you're qualified, you think you can really add value, but at this stage of your life, you're looking for something that gives you more flexibility, and this job would do that. We go through different phases of work in our life, and this is a time when you don't need to have the 60-hour, 70-hour a week job. You're looking for something different, but you can still really add value, and you have to just convince somebody of that.
I was laid off in 2002. I was an antitrust lawyer, and I loved my job. I mean, I loved it. Really never got back on track. And now I would really like to get back into law in some kind of way, because I worked hard in law school. I worked hard as a lawyer, but I only worked as a lawyer for about 4 years. Since then, I've done writing work as a lawyer on and off. I have a cousin who's a lawyer in Pennsylvania, and I did some work for him for a bit.
What I'm hearing right now from you is you've kind of tried a bunch of different things. You're a little lost about how you can really focus your energy and really take a direction that will feel really good for you, validating like a good use of your time, and also getting back to what you love, which is law. The core of what Mary's talking about is very relevant for this group, which is stepped away, life happened, you blink, and it's 20 years later. And now you're kind of stuck. You don't know how to figure out what your next move is. What basic advice might you give to this group about a situation like that?
During those 20 years, did you keep your license?
Yeah, so I kept that up. I haven't really needed to do much because I really haven't been practicing. I really enjoyed the research and the writing, and I feel like that's where I do my best work.
And you've identified, two of your greatest strengths, right? The research and the writing.
My love is the actual argument writing and doing the research and really, ideally winning cases and winning tough cases. I really enjoy the mental challenge of that.
There are research jobs available at law firms. That's one thing to look into. Local Chamber of Commerce is a great networking resource. You're really doing it, right? You are identifying what you love. You know what you want. You're setting some boundaries around what you're willing to do. And as Gail mentioned to us at the beginning, that is the first place to start.
Yeah, there were a lot of really good ideas. Katie, thank you. You shared a lot of good. I was thinking about that too, research kinds of positions within, whether it's a law firm or something else, other organizations. Somebody put advocacy groups, lobbying groups,
Yep.
That kind of thing, where they would really love somebody, a professional, researcher, writer.
What skills do you have? How do you bring them into the space that you want to be in next? Whether that's returning or making an industry change. So Gail, talk to us a little bit about how do you do that pivot? Give us a little bit of a taste of what you presented in the spring about, I don't love what I'm doing now. I took a break. Now's my time to really do what I've always wanted to. How do you break in?
Okay.
Talk us through that.
Yeah, well, it's some of it I've talked about a little bit, but just to kind of reinforce that, it's a lot of it is kind of identifying your skills and your abilities and your competencies, because we all have very, broad skills that are transferable, that are not specific to what we did to that one industry. So I think the hard part is identifying what those are and being able to then articulate why you think you can transfer those to another industry. But that takes some practice, that takes some skill, that is helpful to have a coach work through that with you, actually. But I think what I would say is, think about and talk to people who are maybe in the new industry that you're looking at and say, this is what I've got. Does this make any sense to you in terms of transferring it to what you do? And I think you'll find that people are very receptive. I mean, there are very few jobs out there where the employer cannot teach you, the day-to-day aspects of the job. What they're really looking for, the softer skills or the technical skills. They're looking for like people who can communicate, people who can write, people who can who can build relationships, all of those kinds of things is what people are looking for. So don't have some confidence that you do have things to offer. And it's just a question of doing some homework on, what's needed. Look at job descriptions, see what they're asking for. Yes, there will be some technical things that maybe, like, again, with the upskilling, that you can get a certification in, that you can do some coursework in, so that you're more competitive. But a lot of it will be, taking situations and experiences you've had, being able to talk about them, stressing what you've accomplished. Believe me, people want to hire individuals who have accomplished things, who have, saved money, made money, saved time, all these different things, made things better. So, I stress that a lot, especially on resumes, where resumes are they're marketing documents. They're not a legal document. It's a marketing document, and you're marketing yourself. And what you're marketing is what you've accomplished, what the results are of the work you've done. So just believe that you can do that, and you can make a case for why you're a fit for something else.
Yes, I love thinking about those documents as persuasive pieces of writing. And all of us who went to Smith College have done our fair share of persuasive writing, right?
Right.
So I think that reframe is very helpful, because they do, at least I've had the experience of thinking about my resume as this very templated thing that I just kind of fill in, and I don't give it that kind of personal flavor or that persuasive slant. And your cover letter as well is another way to really get into the persuasive reasons why you are a great fit for the job. And I would say that in my experience, folks sometimes don't take full advantage of that. So I love thinking about that as a persuasive document versus something that's just a laundry list of everything you've done, and really thinking about, as you've said, what is the job description asking for, and making sure that you're hitting on those things in any materials and documents that you have prepared for your application, which is also prep for your interview, right? Because you can refer back to that and use that as a way to really articulate what you're bringing to the table. Who are you? Why should we hire you? What do you bring to the table? And again, you reference really turning to your network, finding your people who you can ask for advice on what you need, ask for advice about who they know and how you can connect with them. And then ask them, can we walk through some questions before I have this interview or before I have this informational interview?
Right.
Really showing up to the table prepared and leveraging that network to really be able to effectively make those asks and ask questions and just seem engaged in that way, I think is really critical. Yeah.
Just a very, very quick anecdote about how I got my last job after not working for 10 years. I was with a friend of mine. We had been in a mom's group together for like 20 years or something and never really talked about our professional backgrounds very much. And I was telling her I was thinking about going back to work, and I told her what I did, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I've got a friend who does exactly the same thing." She connected me with that friend, and I was employed a month later. That's just a case for, everybody is a possible contact, and you never know who knows somebody who can lead you to a really great opportunity. So don't discount really anybody.
You don't have to be at a networking event to network.
Right.
That was a mom group that you were a part of, particularly relevant for those people who are out of the workforce raising families. But really, any interaction, networking is relationship building, right? It's building relationships, it's understanding kind of what you need, what the person has to offer, not having a transactional conversation. That is not networking, but it really is kind of relationship building, very simply put. If we should be tailoring our resume for different job postings, what does this mean when using LinkedIn? Okay. So how do you kind of have your general resume on LinkedIn and also have a tailored resume for jobs you may be applying for and targeting?
Right. So you do want to customize your resume for every job you're applying for. And a really easy way to do that is at the top of your resume, have a couple of sections that are easy to change information in and out of. And one of those things is sort of a key skills, key competencies table. And it's usually a list of between 9 and 12 skills. And you just make a table like a 3x3 or 3x4 table. And the thing that you could do there is, depending on what you're applying for, you can take skills out and put different skills in based on what the job description is asking for. That's a really easy way to do that. You can also customize kind of a little summary statement. That's another way to do it. Another very easy way is at the very top of your resume, under your heading, your name and your address and everything, you can have what we call a branding statement. And that would just be a title. And you might put in the title of what the job is that you're applying for. Maybe it's marketing manager or it's director of communications or something like that. And that branding statement you can change every time, depending on kind of how they're framing it. A lot of that is, especially if you're applying to a big company that's maybe using screening software, applicant tracking software, they'll be looking for keywords in your resume, and they'll be looking for those keywords in the skills section, a branding statement, and a summary. But the rest of your resume, you can kind of leave the same, and that's what it would look like on LinkedIn. So you do not need to change your LinkedIn very much. LinkedIn is, it's great because you can scroll through it, so you can make it as long as you want. And you can also write more on LinkedIn. The summary, the about section can be, 300 words. I mean, you can really write a paragraph about who you are and what you believe in, what your philosophy is. And that's where you can talk about also, why you've taken a career break and what you gained from it, what you learned from it.
I love the idea of having that editable section of your resume that is your kind of custom spot. And then it doesn't mean that you're lying on your LinkedIn, right? Like there's no discrepancy between what is on your LinkedIn and what's in your resume. Yeah. I guess I would say when you have kind of a brand statement or something like that, I'm looking for a marketing director position at a tech company. You may just want to think about, if you're applying to nonprofits in marketing, maybe not being super specific about which kinds of, right? So you don't want someone to look at your LinkedIn and be like, oh, you're really interested in tech, but you're reaching out to me at a nonprofit for a position. So just thinking about when you are making those connections, people are going to go to your profile and they're going to read it. So making sure that you're having your personal brand. And if you are being extremely targeted, it's great to be that specific. But if you're casting a wider net, maybe ensuring that you're not alienating anyone through what you may be putting on your LinkedIn profile
Right.
or in your resume. But that custom section at the top of a resume really helps with that issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure, by the way, make sure you put your LinkedIn URL on your resume. Everybody will look at your LinkedIn profile. Everybody looks at those now.
And so many people are applying through LinkedIn. I mean, there are
Yes.
so many spots where you can just click a button and apply. And LinkedIn is a wonderful resource. One of the ways that it's a wonderful resource is that we have the Smith Business Network Careers Connection community. Another great way to find people to network with is our Smith Network app. I'll also mention briefly again the Smith Career Coaches. They are a resource for you. We are resources for you. So Gail is one of our coaches. We have several others. And if you are in need or would like to be connected with one of them, please reach out to me and I'm happy to send you their contact information. You can take a look at their webinars that are on our YouTube page, see who might be the right fit for you, see what you're looking for. Each of them have a little bit of a different style. And Gail, for example, is super for transitions and pivots and kind of wanting to make a change or jump back in. We have some folks who are kind of more, oh, I'm starting out and I really need some guidance. You know, everyone has their particular flavor. So please be in touch. We really here at Smith want to be a resource for you as well. And, you know, the message that I say is that everything that a Smithy needs exists within the Smith network. And I'm really here to help support that. We're building programming, we're building these webinars, we're building technology that really bring that promise to fruition. And so please turn to your Smithies and really tap in to find your next role, your next move. Gail, thank you for sharing all of your insights with us today. We are so lucky to have you.
Great. Thanks, Christy.